Next we have Libby Mutimer, who had biliary atresia. And I noticed you had 2 operations. Did Albert need a bit more practice? 2 Kasais. Fortunately, he did very well with the liver transplant, which was done in 1988. And since that time, I'm very pleased to announce that Libby has won 2 gold medals in the World Transplant Games. So she's obviously taking Harriet's advice on lifestyle maintenance. She's also completed a degree in marketing and communications at university and working as a professional in that regard, and currently lives in Newcastle. I wonder if you've run into young Scott in your adventures in Newcastle. No, you haven't. And Libby, it's my pleasure to invite you up to talk about your experiences.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. So I was invited here to talk to you all today about my liver transplant and my life since then. Everyone here obviously knows I'm a transplant patient, but once I step outside, there's no reason that anyone assumes any differently. It's my family who are annoying. Initially, my story will resonate with a lot of people in here, but I hope as I tell you more about myself that it'll address some of the concerns that you might have about life after transplant. I was born with biliary atresia, and I had, as I said, 2 Kasai operations all the way back then. One was when I was 6 weeks old, and another when I was 6 months old. After the second unsuccessful operation, my family was told that I would need a liver transplant in order to live. So, as you can imagine, the first year of my life was an abundance of medical tests, procedures, and hospital visits, coming down from Newcastle to Sydney almost twice a week, or every 2 weeks. Yeah. My condition remained stable though until I was 2, when the doctors noticed a change in my function tests. And it was at this point that I was put on the transplant waiting list. I was extremely fortunate to spend less than a month on the waiting list before Mum received a call to say that my donor liver had arrived, and the ambulance rushed Mum and I to RPA, where I received a cut-down liver transplant. Despite my jaundiced appearance that you'll see from the photos, I actually seem like a perfectly happy and healthy 2-year-old girl, which means that handing me over for my transplant is something I know my parents struggled with at the time. My transplant was done by the amazing Dr. Shun that spoke earlier. It took approximately 10 hours, and it was done on Mum's 29th birthday. I'm proud to say that this year will mark 28 years since that amazing day. I was the 41st liver transplant performed, the 9th child, and the 4th to receive it cut down. In 1988, back then, I was one of 5 kids transplanted, which was about the average, and now, as Dr. Shun mentioned before, it's more like 12 to 15 and 20 last year, I think it was. My transplant was a success, and it saved my life. My parents took me home from hospital after 20 days after the surgery, and since then I'm happy to report that I've had very few trips since then. I've been really healthy, which is great. After transplant, when we got home, Mum was vigilant with my medications, ensuring that I had my meds at 8 o'clock every morning and night, and not 1 second later. But my meds have never stopped me from living my life as anyone else would. In primary school, I went on excursions and stayed away from home in year 4 and year 6. On both occasions, Mum just gave my meds to the teachers, and they gave them to me at certain times so that I wouldn't forget. There have, however, been times where I have forgotten to take my meds. Sorry, Mum. Usually because I was out with friends, I was distracted by what else was going on that day. But in saying that, I've always understood the importance of my medication and taking them. I've never decided that, I'm healthy, I'm not sick today, I don't need to have them, which is great. I've had new medications introduced, old ones removed, and my doses have changed more times than I can remember. I still take anti-rejection medication, and while some people have made comments to me in the past about them being a bit of a restriction or a burden, it's one that I'm a very small price that I'm happy to pay. When I was 8, I started playing netball, and I play sport since all growing up. I know Mum's told me that the decision to allow me to play sport was one that was questioned all those years ago, but I was a healthy child, and the doctors have always said there was no reason why I couldn't do things that everybody else was doing. And as mentioned before, when I was 11, I did go to Sydney and compete in the transplant games. I will admit this though, I do have 2 gold medals. I didn't come first. I actually technically finished last. But I was the only child I was 11, and I was the only child elected to run in the 800 and 1500 metre track events. So I ran with the women, which means I was the first child to win, to cross the line. So technically, yes, I won. There's never been a time in my life that I've actually been told that I needed to be on a specific diet as a transplant patient. And with all the information available and the resources, there's nothing I can tell you about diet and transplant that you can't find out for yourselves. I will tell you though that I've never actually been on a diet. I hate diets. I do eat as healthy as I can, but I love everything chocolate, and I do at times. I'm not sure if I stick to the 80-20 rule. As a teenager, growing up was pretty standard. I was a cranky, moody girl, and I was always self-conscious, and I just wanted to fit in like everybody else. There were times that I was picked on and called names, but it was never because of my transplant. I went to pool parties and swimming carnivals with school, and I have been, in the past, I have been self-conscious of my scar. Going through puberty is hard enough without a scar that stretches from here to here. But it's part of who I am, and it's not. I wouldn't remove it if I could. Since I was old enough, I've always worn a 2-piece swimsuit, which I'm sure you'll see. These days, I take the approach that there's the people who have more concern about their own appearance than worrying about what I look like. I finished high school when I was 17, and I left home immediately. or as soon as I could. Thanks, Kenny. I lived on campus at university for 3 years in a college that housed 300 students. So there was communal food halls and shared bathrooms and all that jazz. And whilst university is designed for higher education, it's also a very social time. All the colleges, they always held frequent social events, parties, drinking, all of that. And I know when people find out that I am a transplant patient, the first question I am asked is, can you drink alcohol? My answer is yes, I can. It's something my doctors have always told me, as long as I do things in moderation, similar to diet and things like that, that, you know, there's no reason why I can't. But in saying that, no 2 patients are the same, and I don't think there's actually a right or wrong answer for that question. After graduating, I moved to Queensland, where I met my husband, Scott. He's sitting over there. We've lived in Mount Isa and Canberra before we moved back home to Newcastle. And Scotty and I have been married now for 4.5 years. We haven't travelled as much as I would have liked, but we have been to Thailand and Fiji and Vietnam and all those places. And hopefully we'll go to Bali and maybe America soon. Maybe. People often tell me that I am brave or strong for what I went through when I was young, but as I mentioned before, I was 2 when I had my transplant. I have no memory of that time. The people that my illness affected the most was my family. My parents had to physically hold me down for tests and spend endless nights by my hospital bed, question why these things were happening to their child, and even though they knew it wasn't their fault, I know that they blamed themselves at times. Sorry. My family's always maintained a positive attitude about my condition and my transplant, and I honestly think that that impacted the way I viewed myself growing up. They were always open and honest about people who would inquire about it. They've always told me stories. Mum has a scrapbook that she kept of all my photos and armbands and newspaper clippings and everything, which I adore. They never saw it as something to be ashamed of or something to hide, so neither did I. My transplant was never used as an excuse or a reason why I couldn't do things that my friends or my sisters were doing. And one of the things I do remember, Mum used to visit my teachers in my primary school mainly to ask for their help if there was a chickenpox outbreak. And I don't think she actually realises this, but in doing so, she actually made a lot of people aware of my condition and my transplant, which means I never had to explain it to anybody, which was great. I just lived my life. Mama, I do want to thank you for everything you've done to me, and I told myself I wasn't going to cry, raising me to be who I am today. Thank you. My family are all here today, a noisy bunch over here. They've always been incredible support to me. There is one person though that I want to particularly single out, and do not cry. This person's been by my side my entire life, put up with a lot because of me, and they represent a group of people who can be very easily overlooked in these sorts of situations. Even though this person had to go through some horrible times because of my transplant, I don't think they've actually received the recognition for their patience and their kindness through all of it. I'm talking about my older sister, Carly. She's crying, look. It's not just me. When I was sick, Carly was 4.5. She was palmed off to grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever off the street would take her so that my parents could focus all their attention on me. She had her immunisations at the hospital and told it was to protect me. And there was also often times when I was in hospital, she was told that she wasn't allowed to visit me or see me, which was tough. We were always really close. Instead of resenting me or hating me for stealing all the attention away from her, she's actually spent a great deal of her life looking out for me and protecting me. And I've never actually thanked her for that. I love you. That's enough. So today, my life is really quite normal. I work a 9-to-5 job. Scotty and I are happily married. We live in Newcastle, back near our family. I play netball with my sisters and spend as much time as I can with my beautiful niece, Ava, who's out zooing at the moment. I'm happy and I'm healthy, and I plan on staying that way for a very long time. Thank you.